Yeah, Minky. Yeah, Minky. Good one. Yeah.
It's Minky sounding off YouTube. How you doing? You alright? This isn't a gamer video, so there's going to be no gameplay. This is going to be different. I'm going to put this in a different category, but it's going to be on this channel because it's the only forum I've got to talk about things. And I really want to talk about some stuff. It's been playing on my mind for a long time, and I really want to just sort of share my thoughts on it. Now, I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert on this subject. I have just read what I've read online, and I found the information that I could find, and I've tried to cross-reference and check things to make sure that I am actually saying things that are true before going any further. But I just wanted to talk about inequality and how unfair it is. Just how unfair this system that we're in. It's just completely unfair, and it's all wrong. And mortgages are wrong, and money is wrong, and government is wrong, and the system is wrong. It isn't working for anybody, and everything. There's too many unfair things happening, and we're living in this time when it's just constant austerity. Talks about austerity. We've really got to cut spending. We can't help. Basically, my thought is that the government is trying to destroy the NHS. They're trying to take away things that they have to do for us, but still keep taking the money from us like they were providing those services. So it's kind of like we're at a stage in our society where things are being withdrawn slowly, but we're not having any replacements. And we're not getting... So they're taking away services, but they're not also reducing the amount of money we're paying in tax. They're actually trying to increase taxes on us, on normal people, human beings, you, me, everyone else. Yet they're living in this bubble of protection because they've got tons and tons of money. I'm going to show you some web pages that I've been reading about, some things I've been looking at online, and I want to just talk through a few things and just see what I want to try and do here is try and start a discussion, have a few people interested. I'm not trying to start a revolution. I'm not that clever. I just would be really interested to hear what people think about this and whether there's any other facts they've got, or if I've been wrong about something, where am I going wrong? So is everything okay really, or is it as bad as it seems? Here is some important information. Our government, our cabinet ministers are worth 70 million. There's 29 people and they're worth 70 million pounds. Now, if I went to the street pretty much anywhere and grabbed 29 random people, I don't think I'd have people worth 70 million pounds. Yet in our government, the people that we have elected to be our voices, to talk for us and to carry out things for us and to do things that we don't, so we don't have to have a vote every time, every time we want to build a hospital. Well, we don't do that anymore, do we? We just shut them down. But anytime we want to do something collectively, as a unit, as a group, as a people, we've asked these people to speak for us. And it seems to have gone from the voice of the people to the governance of the people. These guys govern us. And unfortunately, the people that are governing us are very, very rich. So they haven't got a bloody clue what it's like for most people in the UK. These guys don't have debts. So they won't ever experience what it's like to have a debt collector knocking your door and talking bullshit and lying to you, saying that they've got more power than they have and they can do this and they can take your things. It's very worrying for people in that situation, particularly if they knock the door of a single woman who's unsure about what her rights are and those sorts of things. There's all these things happening and it's completely unethical and unfair. But 18 out of the 29 cabinet ministers are millionaires. Let's look at that as a population. There's 64.1 million people in the UK right now. There are 280,000 multi-million and billionaires in the UK. These guys are included in that figure, by the way. That percentage is off then, isn't it? If the percentage of the government should be the same as the percentage of the UK, there should only be 0.43% of the cabinet should be millionaires. So like half of a person should be a millionaire. Maybe just someone's legs should be a millionaire if they want to represent us and have the same opinions on the world as us. They're not. They're earning an awful lot of money. I'll come on to that in a little while. They're earning an awful lot of money. So even those that aren't multimillionaires are very, very comfortable. If we have a look at the population of the cabinet, 62% of the cabinet is millionaires. So let's think about that in the scheme of things. Who do you think they want to look after? Do you think they want to look after the higher percentage, us, or their higher percentage, them, with all the money, with everything else? It's a very interesting question because it's definitely them. They look after themselves. They seem to do things that benefit the wealthy. They seem to do things that benefit the rich. They seem to do things that benefit those who have already everything, and nothing for us, the people that are struggling day to day to try and make ends meet. You hear these statements all the time. Just got to try and make ends meet, living on credit, using credit cards, trying to do these things. If these guys want to borrow money, they borrow it at 0% interest. If we want to borrow money, some people are paying 2,000% to get a loan to get them through the end of the week because they haven't got any food. It's disgusting. It's a disgusting situation, and I'm very angry about it. And I really think we should all be really angry about it because these people do not speak for us. They are not using their role, their privileged position that they've been given, the voice of the people, to speak for us. They're speaking for themselves and for their friends. And if you want proof of that, here is Cameron's cabinet. Over half of them went to Oxbridge. It's cool, isn't it? Nepotism is just rife in the government. It's a little old boys network and they're all looking after each other. There was a huge paedophile scandal going through. Apparently there's a very terrible paedophile ring within Westminster. You can go and do research on that yourself, but you just start looking at it and it'll just make you sick to your stomach, the things that happened and what went unknown and unseen. But nobody did anything or said anything about it because you've got to look after your own, haven't you? You've got to look after your own. It's disgusting. They're just detritus of people. Power hungry is the issue I think you have with politicians. They want to be in charge. They don't want to help. They don't. Not all of them. I can't tar all politicians with the same brush, but I would say the majority seem to be self-serving, and that stands true for I think most countries in the world. So look, that's what's happening. Those are the people that we've put in power to be our voice, and instead they're governing us and telling us that we don't need this and we don't need that. Here's a prime example. This guy is called Ian Duncan Smith. Now, he's the Work and Pensions Secretary. So he's like the secretary who looks after the poor. He's the one that has to make decisions or puts papers together that help the government form decisions on what we need as a people. The ones who are the poorest and the most vulnerable people in the UK rely on this man to take care of them. But he claims he could live on £53 a week. Now, I've got to accept, this was in April 2013, this article, and this is when he did all this crap. He said he could live on £53 a week. So what happened was, really fantastically, people came together, and on the first day, 25,000 people? Yeah, 25,000 people signed a petition to say, go on then, live on £53 a week. A little while later, guess what he did? It's a stunt. I'm not going to live on £53. There's no way I'm going to live on £53 a week. He actually... he says somewhere in this article, I'll put links to all these articles in the description, but he says somewhere in this article that actually he's lived on the breadline. He's been unemployed twice, so he knows what it's like to live on the breadline. This guy hasn't got a clue what it's like to live on the breadline. He's a multi-millionaire. Here is his home. Let me show you it. It's a £2 million mansion. Now, do you know what he has to pay in rent for that? Nothing. It's free. He gets it free. He married into a very wealthy family and they gave him this house to live in. It's got 4 spare bedrooms. It's worth about £2 million and he doesn't pay any rent for that. So, yeah, maybe he could live on £53 a week because he's probably somehow not paying bills or something. I don't really know. £53 a week. You can't buy food, pay bills. What else? What else could you... Well, what £53 a week nowadays is a shopping budget. We live pretty frugally. We've got not a lot and... our shopping bill's creeping up and up and up. So about 50 quid a week almost. It's sickening that this asshole is in power telling us what we can do. And he's never had to go without a day in his life. He's never been hungry. I mean, how many people watching this now because you've been affected by something that was in the title or you've been searching for things like this? How many times have you been hungry? Really? Sorry, I coughed, so I cut a little bit out. But I'm not bothered. I've been hungry in my life quite often. I mean, look at me now, I'm a big fat greedy pig, but that's because I was so hungry as a child. We had a single parent who did her best. She really did her best and worked every day, but we just didn't have enough money to get through the month. There was too much month at the end of the money. So we had hand-me-down clothes. There's nothing wrong with having hand-me-down clothes, but my clothes came from my female cousin Jenny, so I often look quite odd in my little dress. And I would say, Army Surplus Store was great, but I spent a lot of my time as a child dressed as a Japanese admiral, so it was quite ridiculing. I didn't really spend my time dressed as a Japanese admiral, but I could have done if they had that uniform instead of the dress I wore. So this person is in charge of making decisions that affect us, that affect you, if you ever needed help. And you might think, oh, he's a grandeur benefits person. I'll tell you my story. I broke my back in 2005. I carried on working for 3 years. I didn't know I'd broken my back at the time I'd broken it. I kept working in just inordinate amounts of pain. Actually, I broke my back in a hurricane and I carried on bailing water, carrying big buckets of water. So I'm not some little wimpy guy who gives up and does stuff. I carried on working for 3 years, but by the time it came to the end of my sort of working life, I was taking a lot of time off sick with fake illnesses because I was in too much pain. I was drinking Lemsip constantly, and I was doing a lot of lying down in the office and wearing braces and hiding away. So I was a pretty terrible employee, but I was in fear of losing my home, which I ended up having to sell because I couldn't afford to live there because I wasn't getting the help that I needed. Now, I paid my dues, I paid my tax, I paid my NI. Before that career, that was the least paid I'd ever been. Before that career, I was in publishing. I was earning a fortune, and I paid my dues. I've paid more tax than I'll ever be able to take out the system. If I never ever work a day again ever, I would never be able to get my money back ever. But I've paid into our society. I've paid into our. I was happy to do it. I paid in. I was earning enough, so I paid in. But I then needed help, and I was just left in the cold. No, fine, your house is gone then, mate. You can't live there. Your house is gone. The bank need it back. The bank needs your house. The bank don't need my house. It turns out, I'll show you something in a minute. It may or may not be true. I'm looking into it at the moment, but it does seem as though mortgages might not be real. But that's how money's created. Let's look at that in a little while. So if anything happens, you might be sitting there very wealthy, judging me, but one mistake, one accident can change your life entirely, can completely ruin everything you've got. And there's no amount of insurance that you've got that will keep things going if you can't keep contributing. These companies are only interested in you for one thing, and that is the funds that you've got. So this asshole is in charge of telling us what we need and what we can do. Then he said, I could live on £53 a week. And then he said, actually no, I don't want to, because it's really shit living on £53 a week. But then this same guy who says he could live on £53 a week and then says, no, I don't live on £53 a week because he has got a massive house, is actually running up enormous debts to the extent that he got his expenses card cancelled in July. His expense card was cancelled because he wasn't spending on the right things and wasn't paying his bills. So he's an asshole. He's a complete and utter asshole. And yet he's been elected to be the voice of people from his constituency. I don't care where it is. I'm not interested in those sort of things. So that's Ian Duncan Smith, who is the person who's supposed to be helping those that are less off than himself. He's in charge of that. Then moving on from there, I started thinking about homelessness. And this is another thing that started really pissing me off. It turns out there's actually 100,000, or figures. This is from September 2015. So this is the BBC. I trust the BBC to be telling the truth, but let's hope they are. But homeless figures, nearly 100,000 children in England homeless. Nearly 100,000 children in England are homeless. That's disgusting. That is absolutely just not... It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. Take away from that the children. That means that there's God knows how many people homeless. And here's the thing that really is getting my nerves. Let's come back to here. There are more than 1 million homes currently empty in Britain. 1 million, more than 1 million. There's 100,000 children sleeping rough, but 1 million empty homes. What the hell's going on? How come somebody is so wealthy that they can live in a house and then have another one that they don't even need to use? I've just got that. Or a company that owns houses that is just taking money, not paying taxes, not doing what it's supposed to do, and having empty homes. Having places where people could live, but you're not living there because you're dirty trash. You're not a human being. You're living on the streets. You're scum. It's your parents' fault. They must be taking drugs. They must be doing this. They must be doing... Whatever the reason, there are human beings that aren't being taken care of in our society. And in this day and age, we shouldn't be letting that happen. We should be empathising with everyone's situation. We should be helping everybody and stopping these greedy bastards from taking from us all the time. They are not helping us. They are not helping society. They are taking from society and serving themselves. And this should stop. This is disgusting. This is just horrendous. You read 100,000 children. I've got 2 children. If they were ever homeless, it would be my fault. How do you think their parents feel that they can't put their children in a home? They can't have a roof over their head. That's one of our basic rights. It's one of our basic rights, a roof over our heads. Yet 1 million homes are empty because people have got too many homes, so I can't live in that one, so I leave it empty. In my opinion, if there is a homeless person, if there's one homeless person, it should be a criminal offence to have an empty house. To own an empty home, it should be criminal. Now, if that person can't afford to pay you rent for that house, you should be going to prison. It doesn't matter. You go to prison if you won't put them into that house. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And that should... something that these politicians, these people that are supposed to be the voice of the people, have allowed this to happen. We've got a society in Britain where we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and people are sleeping on the streets. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. And you can say, oh, it's drugs or it's this. People make mistakes in their lives. I've made lots of mistakes in my life, and I'm sure you may have made a mistake in your life or two. But did you deserve a second chance? Did you need help to correct it? You know, did you get through any adversity in your life without any problems? I mean, if you've never lived in a house where you were beaten, or you've been not abused even, but just not a happy childhood, then you'll understand that actually running away from home is sometimes better than staying at home. Being not there is better than sleeping on the street. Is better than being there and being abused or being beaten or being hurt. It's better to be somewhere else. People need help. These kids take drugs. Girls, women sell their bodies to pay for drugs. In Ireland, they are going to decriminalise. I'm not 100% on this story because I haven't read it all, but I read a sort of little précis of it. They are going to decriminalise drugs. Class A, everything. No, that doesn't mean to say that they become legal. It'll still be illegal to sell heroin and things like that. But they're going to open some centres, specifically in Dublin, I think, that are going to allow people to go there to inject in a safe place. I think last year there was 5,600 something people that died from overdoses by injecting in the streets and doing these things. And that isn't to say the countless people that were catching AIDS and getting other hepatitis and other diseases and things like that. But they're going to set up some safe centres for people to go and inject in a safe place. Those centres, how many people died last year in those centres, do you reckon? It was 0. And the people that go to those centres would get help to eventually come off drugs. That helps reduce crime. That helps get people back into society, earning money, paying wages, doing things. People just need help. They need guidance. And we don't know how to do things. If you're a parent right now, you know what I mean when I say we're making up as we go. We don't know what we're doing. We're just trying to not raise murderers and psychopaths. We're just trying to keep our kids alive every day and not raise nut jobs. I mean, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I can tell you now they're all nut jobs. But people need help. We don't know what we're doing in life. We don't know the way forward. We don't have a plan. Very few people have, well, this is what I'm going to do in my life, and can stick to it. You're just kind of going by day to day and getting on, aren't you? That's kind of how you're living. And if you're honest with yourself, that's how you've always done it. So why should people who've made mistakes be constantly penalised? Constantly penalised, thrown in prison, not given the support to get off of drugs. It is possible to kick drug habits. I think Russell Brand used to be a heroin addict, didn't he? And he's done all right. I'm not saying everyone should become a TV personality, but those sorts of things can happen. So you've got homeless people when there are homes. We've got food banks as well, big stores of food, and we've got supermarkets which are throwing foods away. Yet we've got people going to food banks, record numbers of people going to food banks. And this is from April 2015. We said that last year, 3 days worth of food was given out 1 million, well, over 1 million times, 1,084,604 times. I don't know what exact that is. Somebody's written a nice figure, but over 1 million people, well, not necessarily over 1 million people, but over 1 million times that 3 days food was given out to help people that can't afford to buy food. This is Britain, and we can't, and people living here can't afford to buy food. They can't afford to get food. That is just disgusting. What can you say to that? What can you even think about it? There are people in our country right now, where we live, and in whatever country you're in, there are people in your country that can't eat. They don't have food. So, as a person, can you imagine what it's like to be hungry? I know what hunger feels like, true hunger. We haven't eaten for a couple of days and you just want something, and then you're eating, the food you're eating isn't very nourishing, and you really are hungry. Okay, yeah, I get I'm fat, I'm not hungry anymore. But I get that feeling that they had, that desperation. And imagine if you're a parent and your children aren't eating. I'm not asking you to give money to anyone or do anything. I just think we should stand together and say, let's help people. Let's do something. This isn't fair. It's not fair at all. And you see these people that are on benefits and they're all being labelled as, whether it's benefit fraud, benefit scum. Let me show you some figures. Here are the different kinds of frauds that go on. I didn't want to do this yet because I want to come back to tax fraud. I'll do that in a moment and explain it to you. Well, I won't explain it to you, explain what I know about it. Here is the level of benefit fraud, apparent benefit fraud. But within this benefit fraud, they also are including, in the 1 billion of benefit fraud, errors. So errors and fraud are lumped into one, and it's less than 1 billion, okay, in fraudulent claims. Tax fraud, 15 billion. Unclaimed benefits and taxes, what's that, 16, 17 probably? 17 or 18 billion. And then benefits cut, they need to save 22 billion. I'm going to come back to this graph in a minute because I want to show you something about it. Yeah, we're taxed and taxed and taxed and taxed. Here's a tax on fuel. Okay, here's how the tax on fuel works, on diesel or things, and this is in the UK. So you've got the product, which costs, we've actually got one of the cheapest fuels in Europe, I think, at 47.8 pence. On top of that, there's a duty of 57.95%. What they do is they add those two together, right? And then they charge us VAT, value added tax. So that tax means this goes up. So every time they put that up, they get more money in VAT. So we're actually paying tax on a tax. Does it say here, so VAT, petrol buy at the pumps, subject to VAT, which is another additional cost to the consumer fuels. The introduction of a new VAT rate, 20%, 20%, so petrol rise further still, because obviously we're being taxed on the tax. It does say somewhere. Look, the link's in the description. Come and read this for yourself. It's really interesting. We are being treated extremely unfairly by our government, and we're not actually doing anything about it. We're just going along with everything. Yeah, fine, everything's great. But these people aren't affected by the cuts they're making because they're never going to be homeless. They live rent free. They don't care about petrol prices because they've got millions. It doesn't really affect them. A couple of quid, £100 to fill up a car, really bother me. I'll claim it back in expenses and say I was going on a business trip anyway. Their salaries. So they've frozen people's pay. Okay, so the MPs have frozen people's pay. Public sector pay. So civil servants, people like the Ministry of Defence, like police forces, and anyone who gets paid by the government, basically, we're freezing their pay, except themselves. Let's go to there. So they basically, MPs thought it was disgusting. We don't like this at all, that we're getting an 11% pay rise when we're on austerity and we're giving ourselves an 11% pay rise. We really disagree with this. A lot of them took it, by the way, because the IPSA, which is the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, they are supposed to be an independent body that kind of govern the government, if you like, and just make sure that everything's going all right. Why we would need that if everybody was honest and everyone in power was a good person, we wouldn't need this. But anyway, it seems as though they're not as independent as they should be, really. This guy, Professor Sir Ian Kennedy. Wow, a lot of titles in here. He's the chair of the committee. He doesn't particularly like the idea of MPs not being able to employ family members. No, I don't really like the idea of no nepotism. He's like the fact that MPs aren't able to make a profit on the second homes that are paid for by us. What? So we buy an MP a home, and if they sell it and make a profit, that money should go back to the Treasury, shouldn't it? Because it's our bloody money. But he doesn't like that. I don't think that's true. So he's a bit of a knob. Anyway, go and read about this guy. He's the one that keeps giving him 11% pay rise every year. I think he might become a politician at some point in the future. Just a little thing of it there. Anyway, going back to the MPs. Someone said, well, we're not taking that. Here's the salaries of the MPs at the moment then. So the basic annual salary for an MP as of the 31st of July 2015 is £74,000 a year. Okay, basic salary, 74 grand, which is a decent wage compared to the national average of 20. So they're doing all right, aren't they? When they are already on. So let's not do that yet. Right, okay, so that's not a bad wage, 74 grand a year. I think that's all right. And if you were as busy as you should be, perhaps maybe they would have to work too many hours to earn that. But okay, they can claim allowances over the cost of running an office and employing staff and maintaining constituency residence and a residence in London. Now, if you had a job in London, you'd have to get a train there every day. You'd have to commute, you'd have to move to London, you'd have to do whatever it did. Well, their job was in their constituency, but they've got to go to London. Now, I've had lots of jobs where I've had to attend head office meetings, had to go. I paid for that. or the company paid for it. Let's say the company didn't pay for it. They gave me 7p a mile. So it cost me money to go to meetings there because I was only allowed to claim 7 pence per mile because that's the tax there. These guys, we pay for that entirely. We pay for everything they do. But they also get a house somewhere else. So I've got a house in my... This is where I live. This is where my house is. I need a house in London. Do you? Why don't we just build a block of flats and put them in that? Why don't we just do that? Put them in a block of flats. Why don't we just put them in a really shitty, crappy block of flats and let them see what it's like to live? Let me move this out of the way. There we go. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous situation. But then what this guy thinks they should do, this Ian Kennedy, here he is, he thinks it's not very good that they can't sell that house when they've stopped being a politician and make a profit on it. Was that bloody money that paid for it? Anyway, when they stop being a politician, if they're in office for a 5-year term, they'll get a severance package. That will raise their taxable salary by about 12 grand a year. So they're actually effectively on £86,000 a year because they're going to get a big severance package, which they really need because they've been on that much money for the things. But here's the thing about these guys. They're not just politicians. They're probably working on a quango. They're probably an executive director of a business. So because a business can say, oh yes, we've got Ian Duncan Smith on who works for us and he's the welfare minister and we don't want... This guy's going to get paid 3. Boris Johnson's got like 4 jobs. He's got 4. He's a cabinet minister, mayor of London. He's an executive. He writes for the Telegraph and he's a director of a company somewhere. I don't know. How can he be working for us? If we're paying his wages, I want him working for me 24/7. Don't you? I don't want him doing something else. You can only do one job at a time. If I had 4 jobs but worked them all concurrently, I think all my bosses would be a little bit pissed off, wouldn't they? Why can they get away with it? They are leeching scumbags and this shouldn't be allowed. It's just disgusting. Anyway, so that's their salaries as MPs and their salaries. These things don't affect them. So the IMF's not independent. Not the IMF, sorry. Kennedy isn't independent. But then I started looking into the whole thing with money and this austerity and this debt. And I started really trying to figure out, well, who do we owe money to then? So if we're in debt, who are we actually owing money to? And here's some really weird facts. Let me find the information I want to show you. This is who we actually owe money to at the moment as a country. We owe money to the Bank of England. Hey? It's the Bank of England. How can we owe them money? Why are we borrowing money from the Bank of England? And where'd they get that money from? We'll find out in a minute. We owe money to banks and building societies. Or why are we borrowing from banks and building societies? We just bailed them all out to me. The rest of the world, so we've been borrowing money from the rest of the world. I don't know where that comes from. Households. So this is kind of... The way they calculate national debt turns out to be very complicated. And I couldn't even begin to explain it to you. But it does seem a little bit odd how money is created. And that's something I want to talk about in a second and go through those things. But suffice to say, we borrow money out of insurance and pension companies, which is fine, I suppose, is it? But, I mean, we can't balance the books. We should take this much tax in, spend that much money and have a surplus, but we don't. We've always got this deficit because we're always spending more than we're taxing, which is a little bit odd. But that made me start looking at how can we owe money to the Bank of England? Don't the Bank of England print money? No, they don't. Isn't that strange? So the Bank of England don't make money. They don't generate income. The government doesn't generate income. Do you know who makes the income? I read a very boring document here. Okay, I'm going to expand this to the full screen. Let me just check everything's okay. Right. That shows... I'll explain it to you in a second. Right. Because of all the things that go on. This is called the Chicago Paper Revisited. And it was an IMF document. And it was basically kind of like a work in progress. But it says, because a lot of the information here is kind of accurate. It says here, if you can see in my mouse. Because of this, private banks are almost fully in control of the money creation process. Now, I'm going to explain how that works. Okay. That's a very important statement to remember. When let's say you're going to go and get a mortgage, you go to the bank and you say, I want a mortgage, please. They credit check you and make sure you're going to pay it back. So, right, give me some money. So you give them a deposit. Let's say your house is 300,000. They say, right, give me 30 grand. So they have to lend you 270,000. Here's how that money is created. They go on their computer and they type £270,000. There you are. And that money is created. That's how come the financial crisis started. And how everything went tits up and pear-shaped. But it gets worse than that. Because I'm going to try and explain it succinctly in the best way that I know. If somebody can do better than this in the comment section, do better in the comment section. So we pay we borrow money from the Bank of England, okay? They then create. So we borrow money from the Bank of England. No, we don't borrow money from the Bank of England. We borrow money from a bank. Let's say we borrow money from RBS. RBS lend us a lot of money. Right, there you go. And they then say to us, right, we're going to charge you interest on that. So you have to pay the interest. This is where the debt's coming from. We've lent you that money. You pay that back. We then get taxed by the government to pay the debt and the interest. Well, that's weird. Why are you taxing us to pay the interest on a loan that is our money anyway? Why don't you just create the money as a thing? It's so complicated. It's so hard for me to explain. I kind of get the concept, but I can't get it out of my mouth. I want to show you some clips from 2 videos, and I want you to just... I'm going to put links to these in the description. Well, go and watch them. They're very interesting. This first one's about loans and mortgages. I'm just going to play you a clip. The guy who's talking now was a banker in the UK. So here's how he explains the way government should be doing things.
The thing about the government is that they can issue the money supply interest-free. So, for example, for an infrastructure project that needs say $1 billion, the government can actually issue that directly into circulation. There's no interest charge. If the banks issued that into circulation, it would come with interest.
But what?
So the banks issue money and they charge us interest. If the banks issued money, they wouldn't be charging interest. So the banks lend us money and we have to pay back loads of money to the bank. But the government could do that and then we'd just be paying the money that it would cost to do something and not have to pay the interest. Well, that seems to make perfect sense, doesn't it? But now here is a little girl who is going to explain much better than I did. Now, I don't believe this is her words. I don't believe she came up with this subject on her own. But she's speaking at the Banking Institute. She's talking about Canada, but this applies to everywhere in the world. So just listen to what she has to say.
First, the Canadian government borrows money from the private banks. They then lend the debt-based money to Canada with compounded interest. The government then continues to increase taxation of Canadians year after year in order to pay back the interest on the exponentially growing national debt. What results is inflation, less real money for Canadians to spend into our economy, and the real money being used to pad the pockets of the banks.
Go and watch her. What she has to say as well. The money system is a complete mess. A complete and utter mess. And it's all screwed up. Everything's screwed up. Currently, we have a £22 billion deficit, apparently, that we're going to try and get back. Well, we've got a £43 billion deficit. We're going to try and get this money back by making cuts to the welfare system. Why don't we just create our own money? Why don't we just make our own money, release money from the government, and just get rid of our debts? Why don't we do that? Why are we taxing us all the time so that we can keep paying bankers? The bankers who are probably the guys who put all the people in power. They are the secret puppets doing everything. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this does really seem to make a lot of sense when you start looking at it. So we need to get this money back from us. We have to tax us and cut money to our services, to the NHS. Nurses are paid a pittance. Any job where you care for other people, it seems that you get fucked over. You get screwed over the minute you start caring for someone else. If you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're a manager in a hospital, you're probably doing all right. And if you're a senior mister who only consults for the private companies, then you're probably doing all right. But if you're a nurse or you're a junior doctor, you're shit out of luck. You're not going to earn very much money because you're caring for the people. Firemen, police, you're not going to get much money. It's disgusting. That's an awful situation. Those are the people that... Firemen are putting their lives on the line to save us. Soldiers, they're being paid... I think a Marine is on about £19,000 a year, and they generally tend to be the first people into battle, and they are the ones that actually get shot at when they go to work. People try to shoot them and kill them. They're on 19 grand a year. That's disgusting. It's just wrong. Totally wrong. A politician's on £74,000, and he has to go into a lounge and drink beer and smoke cigars and congratulate him and his pals on doing a wonderful job at running the country today when they've actually run it into the ground, borrowing money that we don't need to borrow from a bank so we can help our friends who own the bloody banks. It's awful. I want to show you some figures. These are some really horrendous facts and figures. Now, these figures are from 2013 again, I think. Let me just check the date. Yeah, 2013. So we've got this massive deficit. But let me tell you what's happening. We're not taxing companies because these guys are paying the politicians to get into power. There's no reason. Why would these companies donate loads of money to political companies? It's so they can have them in their pocket. Why would a huge company want to sponsor the Labour Party or sponsor the Tory Party? It's so they've got them in their pockets, and then they can get these tax loopholes and just get away with just basically robbing us blind. Let me look here. Right, here's Experian. You know, the credit company that tell whether you can or can't get a loan if you're some little poor lowly person, so you end up going to Wonga. Right, these assholes. Their profits were £454 million in 2013. So how much tax they paid? They paid zero. We paid them £159 million of our money as a tax credit. What? In 2013? When did the financial crisis start? Same for Vodafone. Their profits were £9.5 billion. 9.5 billion. If you want to know what that is, that's 9500000000. That's what their profit was. We paid them £4 million as a tax credit. This is just ridiculous. I keep saying disgusting, but it is disgusting me. It's making me feel actually physically disgusted. I want to just retch. It's just awful. So I started working out some figures. Okay, I went to this corporation tax calculator. Here's 9.5 billion. Okay, for 2012-2013, they should have had to pay. This is a ridiculously large number. It's 2,280 million. 2,280 million. So 2.2 billion pounds should have been their tax bill. We paid them £4 million. We could have done something with that 2 billion, couldn't we? Could have been doing it with every year, and we shouldn't have been paying them £4 million. We shouldn't have been giving them a credit for it, at least anyway. So I went online. I got some calculators. That's not one of them, obviously. Here is the total amount of money that we paid them in. So the figures from this page. Here's how much we paid to those companies instead of charging them, and it's here. We paid them 1,820. Oh God. Christ, 182.6 million pounds is what we gave them in tax credits. 182.6 million pounds. That's what we gave them. If we had charged all of them the tax they should have paid, actual figures were higher than this, but I just did it on 20% because I'm not a genius. Anyway, this figure, and I find it hard to even read it. Here's the 3. Here's the 3. So that's the million section. So that's 1 billion. They had 3. God, we should have taken an awful lot of money from them. We shouldn't be in the shit we're in just from those top companies. We shouldn't be in any trouble just from those top companies if they paid their tax. Well, there's a simple solution, isn't there, to all of these problems that we've got and all these issues. Firstly, we get rid of these rich people that are running our government. They should not be. There should be a representation of the people running the country. It should be that we run our country. We decide who does what and what wars we go to, and some dirty little war for oil. Right, I had to have a cut because I just had a little mental breakdown because I'm so annoyed with all these things. There's a solution to this, and here it's really simple. Number one, we get rid of that government. They shouldn't be in power. They shouldn't be telling us what to do. They're not representative of the people. They don't have our best interests at heart. So they should go. That's it. That's the first thing. They should have to go, and we should have a representative government in power. People that represent us, and they should be our voice. They should talk for us, not to us. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we can get rid of this austerity. We can get rid of all these debts we're in and all these problems that we've got. If the government took away the power of the bankers and created the money and created the income and put that money back into the country. If we didn't have to pay for public services, if we didn't have to pay interest, we could all have a better life. We need to start helping people that need help. So that's it. That's all we have to do. We have to help those that need it. We have to stop letting the bankers run our country and stop letting the bankers run our government and stop letting companies and corporations dictate what we can and can't do. If a corporation like Vodafone doesn't want to trade in Britain because we're going to make them pay tax, somebody else will. Somebody else can make £9.5 billion in profit. Somebody else will do that, because I'm sure 7 billion is better than nothing. So if they don't want to come in and do that one, piss off then, because we're paying them 4 million a year. We don't need that company here. Experian, we don't need you. We don't need you in our country doing stuff. Get out. Look at this company. Look, British American Tobacco. They make cigarettes and tobacco. Kick them out. Get rid of them. We don't need them. They're not paying any tax. So what's the point? £4.9 billion and they had no tax bill. How did that happen? How did they do that? So if a company makes £1, they have to pay 20 pence out of that pound. That's it. Boom, done. And you have to pay that in England. And if you trade in England and you use pounds to take over the counter, then you have to pay 20 pence out of every pound you earn. No ifs or buts. Starbucks were getting away with it by charging their branches an awful lot of money for the franchise fees. Well, that's fine, but you still have to pay 20 pence out of every pound that you earn in that store, whether it's profit or not. You have to do it. Because if you haven't got a profitable branch, shut it down. Somebody else will open up and they'll do it profitably and pay their taxes. Companies have to start paying their taxes. Banks have to start paying their taxes as well. And they've got to start being governed. Banks can't govern themselves. People are too greedy. Bankers are too greedy. Corporations are too greedy. A corporation is interested in making profits. People aren't evil. The people that work there aren't evil. There isn't somebody at the top of a corporation saying, I'm evil, I'm an evil person. This guy here, this man, Vittorio, I should have picked someone else. Nick Buckles I should have picked. He didn't sit there saying, right, I'm not going to pay any tax. He's saying, right, what's the best thing I can do for the company, for my shareholders? I have to make a profit for my shareholders, otherwise I'm going to lose my job. So what's the best thing I can do? And that is to fucking screw everyone over and to start just not paying taxes. If these companies paid tax, we'd have had £2 billion off this company in that year alone. So since then, we'd have had 2 billion. We'd have kept that 4 million. We'd have had 2 point something billion. We wouldn't be in a shit room because we'd be taxing not just these guys. This is just literally the first. What's this? 1, 2, 3. So this is the first 12 companies in the FTSE. 12 companies out of the FTSE 100 that aren't paying taxes and are avoiding it. If we looked at all these huge companies that are avoiding taxes, I don't think there'd need to be any austerity. But then, how would the politicians who are looking after themselves get onto these companies' boards in their board of directors and be paid inordinate amounts of money to screw you and I over? It's disgusting. And I'm going to say sorry again. This isn't a gaming video. I feel as a human being, I have to say these things. I have to talk about these things. I just needed to get it off my chest and say that this is wrong. And the only people that can make a difference is us. We're the only ones that can make a change. And it doesn't need 1,000 of us. It doesn't need 100,000 of us, 600,000. It needs all of us to stand together and say it's wrong. Everyone's kind of happily just trying to get by at the moment. I don't like things to change. I'm all right. I'm getting on all right. I've got a nice TV and my car's all right and everything's okay. But it's not going to stay that way for long. We really do need to do something about this. So, maybe I will start a political party and you can vote me into power and I'll be the Prime Minister and I'll do things fairly. We'll pay nurses a good wage at least. Firemen. We'll stop taxing people for nothing and we'll start taxing companies for everything because they're scum. Look, it's just scum. Anyway, look, thanks for watching this video. I know I rambled on a lot. I hope I made some sense. I hope some of the things I've said have sparked your interest. And if you check out the links in the description for this stuff, check out the links for my shop as well. I've got a shop, sells t-shirts. I'm trying to be a person. I'm trying to make a business out of something. It's not working. I've got a little t-shirt shop. Don't make any money on that. I've got a little Patreon. You can donate money to me if you like for being a person who creates things. And, I'm trying to be active and busy, as busy as I can be. But unfortunately, people like me aren't being left in the wayside. If I had all the equipment I needed that I could go to work every day, it would cost probably more than I could earn to do it. I'd just be the worst employee. I was just terrible. In the last little bit of my, I'm not okay. I've had to cut again because I started rambling. So look, thanks for watching this video. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you watched it all. Hope something sparked your interest. If you spotted mistakes, if you think I've said something wrong, let me know in the comment section. If you agree with anything I've said, let me know in the comment section. If you know anything interesting, put it in the comment section. And I've got a policy of trying to respond to everybody who's watched my video. So if you've watched my video, you've commented and taken the time to do that, I will go out of my way to talk back to you. I can't do that every day because obviously I'm a bit of a spaz and I find it difficult to sit up all the time. So when I can, I do. So appreciate you watching this video. Sorry it's a long rant. That's the end of it. Love you. Bye.
Yeah, goodbye. Yeah.